Well, it was back in September of last year that Maxime Bernier dropped a political bombshell, namely he was leaving the Conservative Party of Canada to form his own political entity, the People's Party of Canada. Since then, Mr. Bernier has been crisscrossing the country, attending rallies, forming policy, meeting everyday Canadians, and I am very delighted to report that we have Mr. Bernier in our studio right now. Welcome to Toronto, Maxime.
Thank you, merci.
Thank you so much for your time. Now, the last time I saw you, Ms. Bernier, it was back in November. You were in foreign nation country. You were having a rally. There was about 1,200 people in the facility. So, in other words, the media probably said there was half a dozen people there. But the roof almost caved in with the excitement. But you may have noticed that compared to November, here we are in May, 1 month into the carbon tax as of yesterday. And I want to get your thoughts on that because we hear so much buzz from everyday Canadians. What we hear is that this is a tax that, first of all, it's very economically dubious, especially for a country that manufactures things. And secondly, it is based on what I would call junk science. In other words, the jury is still out, I would suggest, that climate change, global warming, however you want to call it, is man-made created. And I want to get you to weigh in, on the whole climate change debate, Mr. Bernier, and this idea that a carbon tax is going to be a solution for all that ails us in terms of the environment.
So first of all, let's say that the climate is always changing. That's a fact.
Yes.
That being said, there's a lot of event that is happening in this country and all across the world on the planet. And, I'm not a scientist, but I don't think that we must impose a tax on carbon when our country, the emission is only 1.6% of the global emission.
Right.
And we know that the other countries that they signed the Paris Accord won't be able to fulfill their agreement and to achieve their targets. So I don't understand why it's a huge debate in Canada and we must impose a tax on Canadians knowing that we won't be able to achieve the targets in the Paris Accord. So if you believe in the Paris Accord, as a Canadian, you must be happy with a tax that will be maybe 3 times the tax that we have, because we'll need not $20 a ton tax to be able to fight climate change in Canada, but the experts are saying maybe $300 a carbon tax a ton. So we don't have that. Justin Trudeau is hypocrite right now because he's saying to Canadians he will achieve the Paris Accord targets with his tax on carbon tax, and he will save the world, but he won't do that. So first of all, be honest with Canadians. I don't believe in a carbon tax. No carbon tax for us at the People's Party. But also contrary to Andrew Scheer with the Conservative, that they're supposed to come with a plan on climate change, and they believe in the Paris Accord. Actually, Andrew Scheer whipped his MP. The first thing he did when he became the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada on a vote on the carbon tax on the Paris Accord, not on the carbon tax, sorry, on the Paris Accord. Yes. And so he believed in the Paris Accord and he will have a plan, but he said, I won't impose a carbon tax, and I believe him. Okay. But it will impose more regulation on businesses. And when you impose regulation on businesses, at the end, it's always the consumers. It's always consumers that they're going to pay for that. They will transfer the cost to the consumers. So for us, our platform is very clear. No carbon tax. We will repeal the Paris Accord. And at the federal level, we'll do nothing. Because the environment is a shared jurisdiction with provinces. And actually, the carbon tax that Justin Trudeau is imposing right now, it has no effect in Quebec. That tax won't apply in Quebec because Quebec, they have their cap and trade system, and in other provinces also. So for us, if a province wants to tackle climate change and having a tax or a cap and trade system, that's their decision. But at the federal level, we won't do anything. It's a shared jurisdiction, and we have other ideas for the environment. But all that buzz about climate change, It is happening, but I don't agree that there's a consensus on that. There are some scientists who are saying, it can be the sun can have an effect, and it's not just something that is made because of the industrialization of the world. So let's be open. Let's be not politically correct. Political correctness, I don't believe in that, and saying the truth, and that's what I'm saying to Canadians.
Indeed, I would suggest, science tells us there's been something like 5 mass extinctions defined by 60% of the species dying out, and they all occurred before Homo sapiens was on the planet driving SUVs and skidoos and what have you. Tell me, Ms. Bernier, if the ostensible policy reason of the Justin Trudeau Liberals that this is all about saving the planet, and as you said, our carbon emissions in a global scale, 1.6%, 1.5%, something like that, it's clearly not true. What is the real reason for this? Is this nothing more than a desperate cash grab?
Oh, it is. When they're saying to Canadian, we will give you tax credit, at the end it will be neutral. But if it's neutral, that won't have any effect on fighting climate change. And because if you want to change the behavior of Canadians, you must impose a huge tax, and that must have a cost for Canadians, more than what now. If it's real that it's neutral, so why changing your behavior? If the tax is neutral, you don't have any incentive to change your behavior. Right. So that's all that logic. I don't believe in that. It's I don't like politics right now on climate change at the federal level. Every politician, they try to scare people. A couple of years ago, that was the polar bears that were supposed to disappear. And now we know that there's more polar bears than ever. Right, yes. So every time, they're always pessimists. Something will happen in 15 years if you don't do that, or if you don't do. So I'm an optimist guy. I believe in people. I believe in humanity. And people will always find a solution to fight our challenges that we have.
And Ms. Bernier, let's talk about the hypocrisy factor. I look at someone like Al Gore. I once read a story about him. I believe his carbon footprint is 28 times larger than the average American. We have Catherine McKenna, the environment minister, saying, park your car or buy an electric car, for a very expensive price. Take public transit, ride your bicycle. The PM says the same thing. Yet whenever we see the Prime Minister or Catherine McKenna attending a function, they are being chauffeured in giant Chevy Suburban SUVs, which they leave the engines idling, by the way, until they're ready to come out. And we have that on footage. This is not hearsay. If I'm the guy on the street, Ms. Bernier, I'm saying, I don't get this. You guys are saying, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes, and actually what they're doing also, they're having program at the provincial and federal level to give subsidies to Canadians to buy electric cars.
That's right, that kicked in, yes.
Yeah, but it's very expensive. So it's Canadians families who are paying for the rich and they will receive subsidies of, in Quebec, it's about $2,000 to buy a Tesla. Yes. So it's unfair. Why?
And the top of the line Tesla S off the lot, I believe, is $120,000. Yeah. So I don't think that person needs a public subsidy.
The middle class won't buy a Tesla if that's their choice, but that subsidies, it's not going to everybody. Yes. So we need to abolish all these kind of programs. They're not efficient. Yeah. When the electric car will be very efficient, the cost will go down, and people will be able to buy an electric car. Now it's coming, and I think in the near future we'll have more electric cars, and they will be more affordable. But now they're not. So why giving us subsidies to a Canadian or a rich Canadian to buy a Tesla? It's coming from our taxes.
Yeah, and I believe I just came across a stat, Mr. Bernier, that that program ended in Ontario with the provincial.
Yeah, that's good news. Yeah,
and I believe it was the Nissan Leaf, the all-electric car that Nissan makes. In August of last year, before the program ended, I think they sold 640 units that month. In November, when the program had ended, they sold 10. So, again, it speaks to, people shouldn't be subsidizing, the purchase of very expensive electric cars. But again, when it comes to this hypocrisy factor, is it just so much virtue signaling, under the guise of I'm doing good for the environment, I'm doing good for whatever, while I'm putting my hand in your pocket and taking your money?
But I think politicians are afraid to tell the truth, and they don't want to. They're afraid of the mainstream media. If you're against policies for climate change, or if you're against the Paris Accord, oh my God, the main media will look at you as you're not politically correct, and so. That's why they're afraid, and they want to buy votes also at the same time. They try to please everybody, and the way to please everybody is to have policies that won't create any controversy, and they don't want to create any controversy. And me, on my part, and with our party, we want to have debates on things that are very important and policies that are very important for this country. Yes, that can create controversy, but it's my job as a politician to explain why we need a smaller government in Ottawa, why a smaller government will create more prosperity. So, and I like what I'm doing, but other politicians, they're too afraid. They will speak about something when they will have maybe 45% of support in the population. For me, I'm speaking about something and I have only 10% of the population on my side right now. It's a challenge for me. The more I will speak, because we're speaking about the real conservative values, if I can express myself like that, the real free market values based on individual freedom and personal responsibility. So when you speak about that, when you have the best ideas, you must explain that to the population, and my goal is to convince more people. So I won't stop to speak about something because only 10% of the population agree with it right now. So the more you speak, the more support you'll have. But traditional politicians, they're not like that. They try to wait. They're doing a lot of polling, a lot of focus group, and after that, they will tell you what you want to hear. But when they will be in government, maybe they will do the opposite because they're saying that without any conviction.
And you said something a little earlier about, Mr. Bernier, when you take a contrary viewpoint to the political correctness factor of buying into climate change and global warming, how you're dismissed, how the term, you're a denier. And I think that's a very loaded term, because when you think of a denier, that's typically associated with Holocaust denial. And I want to segue into a second topic here that's very important to our audience. And it's basically about what I see right now, and it's from the PMO's office on down. It's the demonization of conservatives, of populists, that you are neo-Nazis, you are white supremacists, you are members of the alt-right, and it goes on and on. What is your take on this very disturbing trend right now, Mr. Bernier, where those people who espouse right-of-center opinions are absolutely demonized by the left?
First of all, you must fight that. You must fight it, and and I'm doing that. And the more the election will come in a couple of months from now, I think the more people will understand our position on that. But it's not because on immigration. It's not because that you want fewer immigrants. You're not anti-immigration, and I'm not also for mass immigration. It's a rational position, and I think the extreme is the government right now with their position on immigration. They want always more and more, and as you know, from 250,000 a year will be next year at 350,000 a year. The increase, it is an increase by 40%, and only 6% of the population agrees with that. So the immigration debate and people, because I'm speaking about, when I'm speaking on immigration, I'm speaking about promoting our Canadian values and being sure that our country right now will be like that in 25 years. So, but I think...
And Ms. Bernier, some would say, just using the term, I've seen it, the phrase Canadian values, they would say that's racist, that, that's xenophobic. That is the level of language that we're contending with. And I, as a Canadian, born and bred here, I'm very proud of the values we have in Canada. And why can't we have people on the right in the political arena say, yeah, Canadian values, Western values, that's a good thing?
That's a good thing. I remember in August when I tweeted, I did 6 tweets about the extreme multiculturalism that the Trudeau government they're doing, always celebrating the difference, always celebrating the diversity in Canada.
Yes.
And what I said, that's not the way to do it. We must celebrate what unites us, not what all the difference. And if I don't know that the Chinese community, they want to celebrate their Chinese year, good for them.
Yes.
That's okay, they can do that. But I don't want the government to take the taxpayers' money and to put taxpayers' money to celebrate every different special interest group entity or ethnicity. So we must use the taxpayers' money to celebrate our culture, to celebrate our history, to celebrate what unites us. And you build a stronger party doing that, a stronger, country doing that. So, and a stronger party also, if you believe in what unites us and you promote Canadian values, your political party will be stronger. But that being said, you need to be out there and not being afraid. What I don't like, it's the politician when they have some pushback by media. Oh my God, they will be.
They cave.
Oh my God, yes. But for me, no. And that's why I think this party is growing. People appreciate that. They appreciate the authenticity of our campaign. They appreciate our principle, and we don't do any compromise with our principle. So it's for me. It's my best time in politics. I'm speaking about what I believe with passion, with conviction, and we have a lot of support. And I'm looking at my competition, the other leaders, and they're too afraid. So I'm the only one who speak the truth and what I think is good for this country. So I don't have any competition because the other one, they want to please the mainstream media and they want to please everybody. And we know when you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody.
100%. And, Ezra Levant likes to call the likes of the CBC, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, the mean girls. Well, you can never appease the mean girls, if you're right. I've said they're always going to dislike you. But it bears worth repeating. You're mentioning some statistics, Mr. Bernier, in terms of immigration. We know from that poll last August, 49% of Canadians think the immigration levels are too high. Only 6% think they're too low. And yet we have a federal immigration minister, Ahmad Hussein, and his plan is to bring in something like 1 million immigrants. And by the way, about half of those immigrants are not economic immigrants. Yeah. These are typically elderly family members that need care, that need social services, and so on. I would argue that in a country of Canada right now, where we've had, I believe, 4 months of negative economic growth, we're probably headed into a recession. Is this a good policy? I mean, I can't make sense of this.
It is not. It is not a good policy. Their policy, it is there to be sure that the Liberal Party of Canada would be re-elected. They want to increase, there's 3 categories of immigrant. The economic immigrant, like you said, and I just want that our people they know that. Economic immigrant, it's a person that it's a skilled immigrant, a person that will come here and that person will have a job because the entrepreneur, the business people in Canada were not able to find Canadians to do that job. So that person, the economic immigrant, where they're coming to Canada, first of all, they have a job. They participate in our society right now. It's easier for them to integrate our society, and they are coming with their family, their children and their wife, or the wife, and their husband. So they're coming with their family. But after that, you have reunification of family. So it's for the grandmom, grandpa that want to come to Canada. And like you said, there's a cost for us as a society. And so the Liberal government, they're increasing that. They're increasing the numbers of people who will come in Canada under the reunification of family. And why? Because in some riding, you have a strong, it can be strong people coming from different parts of the world,
right.
and these people, they want to see their grandmom, they want to see their grandpa, and there's a big waiting list right now. And so telling them that, oh, it will be easier for you to bring your grandmom or your grandpa, they will have more votes in certain ridings.
So that's the deal, isn't it? We're going to bring grandma over. Oh, by the way, when it's October 21st, vote red.
Yeah.
Remember who helped you out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they want to have more refugees also.
Yes.
Because, as you know, the Trudeau government, they want to see that the Security Council in the UN. So having more refugees, that's look good for Justin Trudeau. And that's why also he's spending money on climate change, $2.3 billion to fight climate change in Africa. It's crazy. But speaking about immigration, so they are increasing right now the refugees.
Yeah.
They are increasing also the people coming on the reunification of family. And we have a little bit less people coming under the economic immigrants. So our position, and altogether they want more people, so 350,000 next year, a year. So for us, our position, we need to have an immigration system that is sustainable and fulfill our economic needs. So we need more economic immigrants and less refugees and less reunification of family. So that's our position at the People's Party, but altogether fewer immigrants, and I'm always saying 250,000 a year or less, depending of the economic need of our country. And yes, if we have a recession, we'll have fewer economic immigrants.
And I would also argue, Mr. Bernier, it's something that we've hammered home several times here at the Rebel, that when it comes to refugees, I get the humanitarian angle, but at the same time, we have to vet these people. We have to know who they are, what they've done in the past in their countries of origin, and the evidence shows that this is not being done. And I think that's a threat to national security, quite frankly.
It is, but also, these people who are crossing the border in my province, in Quebec, they're not real refugees.
Yes.
And that's not Maxime Bernier who's saying that. The Department of Immigration said that at least 40% of them will have to be deported in 3 years from now, because they're not real refugees. And I understand that. When you are coming from the state of New York, your life is not in danger over there. So we are not helping the real people that need to be helped, the real refugees that are waiting in a refugees camp in a certain country. We're not there, and that's not fair. So these people are crossing the border. 40% of them will have to be deported in 3 years from now. Imagine the challenge that we will have in 3 years.
Yes.
They will maybe have kids, the kids will be at school, and that will be a big mess. That will be very difficult to deport them. So what we need to do is to fix that loophole, and they don't have the courage to fix it. And the way to fix it is to be at the same table with President Trump and having a strong discussion about it. But Justin Trudeau doesn't have the credibility to do that. The relationship with Trump, we know what happened for the free trade agreement. So
yes, no, and I mean, you raise a good point. I mean, we've seen it ourselves. Roxton Road, these so-called refugees, they're wearing designer tracksuits. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police are reduced to bellhops. It's embarrassing. And like you said, these aren't refugees. Let's be honest here. These are people gaming the system, and the Prime Minister, the Liberals in power, they don't seem to have a problem with this.
No, they don't. And I think, it's the reputation of our country. Justin Trudeau said Canada is back at the international scene. But with the relations with China, the relation with the US, the fight with the refugees, we are not working for our country. We want our country to be back, and we want to help our people first. When we're doing that, we're not helping Canadians first, and we're not helping these people also. It's not good for them, because in 3 years from now, a lot of them will have to be deported. So let's be straight and solve the problem in the beginning. But they don't have the courage to do that, and it's very disappointing. So that's why we need to have this discussion, and some politicians are not ready to have that discussion, but Canadians are ready for that discussion.
And speaking of discussions, Mr. Bernier, I want to get into a bit of the culture wars here, specifically when we look at social media. And I'm talking, the giants, the Googles, the YouTubes, the Facebooks. We are witnessing right now, and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, quite frankly, deplatforming and censoring those that are basically espousing right of center viewpoints. I find this, as a journalist, very disturbing. This is an outright attack on free speech for simply having the temerity to have a differing opinion. And I'd like to know how you feel about this.
I think, yeah, that's happening, and you're right, but that's happening from private corporation like Facebook and Twitter, but they're private corporation. I don't want, and I'm a free market politician, I don't want the government to interfere or regulate these free market enterprise. That's not the role. And so what we need more competition. We need another entrepreneur that will compete with Facebook.
Who is that billionaire?
Yeah, but
who is that guy?
I hope a day will come because that's a solution. More competition,
yes.
And we can have another business people, entrepreneur that can build a business and being in competition with Facebook, with Twitter. That's the only solution. The real solution, it is not the government to regulate, because if we regulate, that will be the beginning of regulated free speech.
But Ms. Bernier, with all due respect, look at the Liberals right now.
Yeah.
Who are leaning on the likes of Twitter and Facebook. I mean, you had somebody who used to work in the Prime Minister's office when Michael Ignatieff was leader, Mr. Chan, who is now a senior executive at Facebook. And their ostensible policy reason for going after these platforms and various forms of opinions and speech is to crack down on so-called fake news.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest, fake news to a Liberal means something that is anti-Liberal.
Yeah.
They're very much about diversity, this Liberal Party of Canada, but not diversity of thought and diversity of opinion. Isn't that a worry?
The most important is we are speaking about it right now.
Yes.
We are speaking about it.
Well, we can.
Yes, we are speaking about it right now, and people, they can boycott Facebook, they can boycott Twitter. That's the free markets, that's the freedom that we have in this country. What I don't like from the government, I don't like the government when they're giving subsidies to other media. You won't receive any subsidies from the federal government.
No, sir.
But they're doing that. We want the media to be independent from the government, not to be dependent. And right now with the policies at the federal level, it's all about giving money to the traditional media. So do you think that when they will receive the money from the government, that they will be neutral in their point of view when they will cover politics? You can question that. So that's why the government is doing that. We must cut that. No more subsidies to the media. They must be independent. And there's a great legislation in Canada if you're not successful in business. It's called bankruptcy. We have a bankruptcy act in Canada. And if you're not successful, that's it. We're not there to protect one business as politicians. We're there to create the great conditions that will help every businesses. So that being said about the government, about the private sector, yes, sometimes, it can happen. Somebody can be blocked on Facebook, on Twitter. But if they're doing that for the wrong reason, I think the population will be there. And that's what I'm asking. The population must be there. You must speak about that. The more pressure we'll put, maybe that will change. And if they don't change, you'll have a competitor that will come and build, like what you're doing right now. You're a competition to the traditional media, and you're very successful. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But, but on the other hand, I think how free speech is regulated, so to speak, in the public square is going to be one of the most important issues of the upcoming decade. And there are those that say, look, in the United States, going back a century ago almost, Standard Oil was broken. It was such a monopoly, and it was impossible for a competitor to come in. Maybe is that
but you have a point there. Sometimes we believe in free markets, and we have regulation and restriction that will help only one corporation. So that's why in our platform we want to be able to have foreign investment that will come, like foreign investment in telecom, foreign ownership in telecom. We have 4 big players in Canada in telecom, but we have regulation and restriction against foreign ownership.
Yes.
So you must abolish abolish all these barriers,
Yes.
and like that you'll bring more competition. But you're right, it's always and often because of the regulation from the state that you have a monopoly. If you don't have these kind of regulation, usually if you have a real free market, you won't have a monopoly.
But you know, Mr. Bernier, many of us here at the Rebel, we are ex-Sun News employees, including, of course, our founder, Ezra Levent. We went off the air in February 2015. We applied for a license that I think Sun News was overqualified for. I mean, the ostensible policy reason of the CRTC is Canadian content. Well, here you had, at the time, it was a Quebec company running a Toronto studio with bureaus all across Canada, populated by something like 170 Canadians, telling Canadian stories to Canadian. I mean, we couldn't be more Canadian. You know, I'd have to get a tattoo of the Maple Leaf stamped on my butt, and nobody wants to see that, believe me. And yet, we were denied that license. So even before this social media thing became a thing, here's an example of how right of center speech was stymied. And by the way, what was the reason for not getting the license? Well, the CRTC, they don't have to give a reason. What does that tell you?
But that's why in our platform we want to abolish the CRTC. We don't need a specific regulator for the telecom industry. You don't have a regulator for the, mining industry. A mining regulator, but you have a telecom regulator with the CRTC. So for the competition, we have the Competition Bureau. And if you don't have fair competition, the Competition Bureau is there and they will do investigation. You have the CRTC for the telecom industry. We must abolish that. That's part of our proposal. Let's abolish the CRTC, and the telecom industry and the broadcasting industry, it's an industry like all the others industry. And if there's unfair competition, that will be looked by the Competition Bureau.
Okay. And by the way, you did mention, Mr. Bernier, the media bailout, and in case our viewers are not familiar with that, you are speaking, of course, of that $595 million bailout to media organizations that the Trudeau Liberals are going to give. And I agree, I'm completely opposed of it for the same reason you mentioned. It's the how impartial will you be when you are getting money from the government teat? I mean, it's almost as though it's not the stick in terms of deplatforming. This is the carrot, so that journalists will self-censor themselves in terms of coming up with stories that are potentially embarrassing to basically your sugar daddy in Ottawa. I think this is a terrible thing that we're seeing.
That's a big risk. That's a big risk. And actually, today we just learned that CBC, Radio-Canada in Montreal, they are spending $140 million to build new offices in Montreal. It's supposed to be very tough, the business, and now they have money coming from the government and the taxpayers to build a new head office in Montreal, $140 million. So that's why we have a policy on the CBC. It's unfair, and we must change that, and that's why we want to cut the budget that the CBC receive from the taxpayers, from the government, and being sure that if they're so good, they will be able to have to be like a PBS in the state, and their viewers will pay for their content, and that's the solution. So we must have a CBC that is going to it's transforming and being in line with the PBS in the state, and that's our position. But I agree with you. When you give money to the CBC or to the traditional media like that, there's a risk that the neutrality of their coverage can be affected.
And Ms. Bernier, let's talk about CBC. I go back to your magnificent rally in Etobicoke back in November, and it was a packed house. The cheers were, off the applause scale. You mentioned everything from our role with the UN to immigration. The one thing you said that got by far the biggest cheer was to defund the CBC. In fact, there were people there with T-shirts saying defund the CBC. And I want to talk about that because what we saw just 2 weeks ago over Easter weekend was a CBC show in which they trotted out Omar Khadr,
Oh, yeah.
the terrorist who we have also subsidized to the tune of $10.5 million. And basically, he was treated like a rock star. You had these champagne sipping CBC types mollycoddling all over him. And to me, Mr. Bernier, I'm sorry, when I saw that, especially airing on Easter weekend, which I don't think was coincidental, by the way, to me that says, in terms of everyday Canadians, the CBC, they hate you.
You're right. I don't know what to say about that. I did watch that. It was in French, actually.
Yes.
And usually I don't watch that show at CBC, but I don't know. I did watch it, and when Amor Khadr, what are you going to do there? And but what I didn't like, it is the question that they ask him.
Yeah.
This guy can go on every TV show, but if you have him, ask him the right question. And what he did in the past, and but they didn't ask the tough question, and so because they didn't ask the tough question, he was looking like a rock star.
Yeah.
And that's what I didn't like when I was watching the show, and because they didn't ask the right question, you question the neutrality or the objectivity of the journalists when they don't do that.
And that's an excellent point. I mean, if we have to have a federally funded state broadcaster, is it too much to ask for some balance, for some impartiality? The CBC is stacked with left-wingers, with Marxists. I can only think of one guy, really, who's right of center. That's Don Cherry. And he's on a 7-second delay in case he says something patriotic that his bosses don't like. But we don't get that. We get one narrative. And this, I think, was a jump the shark moment when they brought out an Al-Qaeda terrorist who killed and wounded an American serviceman and who is getting compensated, and we're supposed to think this is a good thing and applaud this person?
Yeah, that was a sad day.
It surely was. Again, we've touched upon so many things here, Mr. Bernier. I'm also curious too, there's been quite a change since we last met in terms of the political landscape in Canada, in terms of provinces going conservative. And of course, the most recent one was Prince Edward Island. In 14 days, Newfoundland will have their election. I don't know what's going to happen there. But certainly this is, it's already more than half the population is now governed provincially by conservative governments. What's your take on this, and how does this help the People's Party of Canada?
First, I think it's a good news, first. Second, I'm looking at the new political parties, like in New Brunswick, they have the Alliance over there, a new party that they started that, I think, 6 months before the election, and they have right now three elected member of the Legislative Assembly. So what I'm looking is people are ready for real change. And when you look at the poll also, 52% of the population in Canada are saying that they're ready to vote for a new political party. And that's very encouraging for us, for me at the People's Party. It's very encouraging because we are a new political party, and I understand that people, they want real change, and we represent real change. If you look at our platform and all the reform and the bold reform that need to be done, and we are ready to do it, I think my goal right now is to be out there and to speak to these people. I think the future will be great for us. Step by step, we are building this party. So the fact that we have more conservative government at the provincial level, it's very good. And for me, I'm looking at it for the next election in next October, the 21st of October. And I'm looking at the moon of the population right now. When you said the rally that I did, yes, you know, a politician coming from Quebec, speaking with an accent. I try to, but I still have that accent.
It's charming.
Speaking with an accent, being in Toronto and having more than 1,000 person, people
Yes.
that are coming to a rally, and we're not in an election campaign officially. It will
Yes.
start only in September. Something is happening in this country. I was in Kingston yesterday. We had more than 150 people over there, and we had the same kind of discussion over there. So something is happening. People are fed up with traditional politicians, and what happened at the provincial level, I think that can be a good sign for the future at the federal level.
But with all due respect, Mr. Bernier, any startup political party of any stripe, it's a Herculean task to take power.
Yeah.
Secondly, the latest Leger poll results from just 2 days ago, it showed the Conservatives at 40%, Liberals at 27%, I believe the NDP at 13%. The Green at, I believe, 11, and I think you were down to a single digit.
2%, 2, 3, depending. But over there, I'm not so concerned about that because we are a new party, and people they don't remember the name of our party, the People's Party of Canada. So when they do a poll like that, they're asking people, for which party you will vote at the next election. They don't name any party. So you need to remember the name of the People's Party. And I can tell you in my own riding in Beauce, when I'm in my riding in Beauce, people are telling me, Maxime, I will vote for you. What is the name of your party again? So people, they don't remember. But if you do a poll and you ask, do you want to vote for the Justin Trudeau Liberals, for the Maxime Bernier People's Party, or for the Andrew Scheer Conservative? If you do a poll like that, we're going to jump from 2-3% to 8%. So our challenge is I need to be out there, I need to speak about our platform, and we need to have a better name recognition. But that's normal after only 7 months. You know what we did in 7 months? The first month when we created the party, we had 30,000 founding members. Now we're around at 40,000 members.
Okay.
After 7 months, because of that membership, we were able to build riding association all across the country, and we have riding association organization in every riding in this country, 338. And now we are in the process to find candidates with our people on the ground. And I can tell you that before the mid-June, we'll have around 250 candidates. And we'll have all our candidates before the end of July. So that's going very well. And at the same time, we need money also, and we are able.
And how are the party's finances?
It's going well. We are able to raise money.
How much money have you raised so far?
Altogether, we raised more than $1.5 million since the beginning. But from January to the end of March, that quarter, we raised $762,000. But if you compare that with the Green Party of Canada, that was their best quarter this year. They raised $783,000. The best after 35 years, that's their best quarter, and ending the 31st of March, last March. For us, a new party, after 6 months, we were able to raise $762,000. That's something. Okay. So we are able to raise the money that we need to build this party. And yes, we'll be able to be competitive at the next election. And yes, it's important for us to have 338 candidates, because that's one condition for me to be part of the debate, with the national debates against Justin Trudeau and Andrew Scheer and all the other leaders. So I'll be there, and that's the only condition. So we'll have candidates in every riding, we are able to raise money, and we'll be there. So yes, if you look at the poll right now, only 2-3%, but if you do another kind of, and you ask people, are you ready for the Liberals of Justin Trudeau and the People's Party of Maxime Bernier, we'll jump a little bit. But I think our next campaign will be in two times. The first, it will be in the beginning, and I hope that will be around 6, 7, 8% in the beginning of the campaign. But after the debate, because for us it will be a huge, people will see me, and they will see me answering the question, and they will see other politicians that, they don't want to commit themselves, they try to please everybody, so they won't answer the question. They will see a huge difference with me and the other politician, and I think that will go well for us, and we will be able to jump in the poll after that.
I can't wait for those debates. Mr. Bernier, you've been so generous with your time. Mr. Producer in my ear is telling me we're almost out of time. I want to give you one last question. I've never told you this, but you, my friend, are the reason for a weekly debate I have at the dinner table with my wife. Here's the problem. I'm a death before dishonor kind of guy when I vote, right? I vote by principle. My wife is practical. And basically, she is putting her vote with the Conservative Party because she's got, her rationale is, forget the flubs, forget some of the weaknesses. She's got to go with the party that has the best chance of bringing about regime change from the Trudeau Liberals, who she cannot tolerate. I have a differing opinion to that. So this is a Conservative household where there's a clashing of opinions. What do you say to those people in those households when it comes to voting with their heart as opposed to maybe voting with their head?
Well, I want people to vote for their values, vote for what they believe in, vote for something. Stop voting against something. So about splitting the vote. The Conservatives are saying that Bernier is splitting the vote, and if you vote for Bernier, Trudeau will win. If you look at our supporters and our membership, only 20% of our supporters are former Conservative. About 40% of them are people who didn't vote at the last election. People who didn't vote at the last federal election and they didn't believe in politicians anymore. They like what we are saying because we're speaking the truth and without any compromise. And remember, 30% of the population didn't vote at the last election. The participation rate was only 70%. So we have a lot of these people are coming. We have also former liberals that are coming with us.
Interesting.
People who wanted to have a balanced budget and lower taxes and voted for Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, and now they don't recognize themselves in the Socialist Liberal Party. And I'll give.
You mean the budget didn't balance itself?
Yes. So they're coming
What
with
did
us.
that mean, by the way?
Oh my God, it's crazy. Yeah. We know that. We know now that the budget didn't balance itself. We know it after 4 years.
Yeah.
But that being said, and we have also some NDP. I'll tell you an anecdote. Our riding association in Newfoundland, we had to manage a little crisis over there because our supporters, they were calling us saying, the people in charge of your riding association, it's all NDP. They voted NDP and they work for the NDP here in Newfoundland. And so you must do something. So I called the riding association. I had a conference call with them. I said, people are telling me that you voted NDP and you work for the NDP at the last election. Is it true? They said, yes, it's true. I said, okay, what are you doing with my party? Did you read my platform? They said, yes, we read your platform. And how come you are with us right now? They said, Mr. Bernier, for two policies that are very important for us. Ending corporate welfare, you will save $5 billion, and it's important, we believe in that. And ending the cartel in dairy, poultry, and eggs, and the supply management cartel. The Canadian families are paying $500 more to support that, and we're paying twice the price. So because of these two policies, they are coming with us. And so what I'm saying, we can attract a lot of people that are not necessarily former Conservative. And I will finish with that. The best example, the best score that we had at the by-election, it was in Burnaby South, an NDP riding. Lauraline, our candidate, she had 10.6% of the vote. And a real Conservative riding near Toronto, Simcoe or Simcoe York, we had only 2% of the votes. So who are our voters? We don't do any polling, I don't know that in details, but that's people who are fed up with politicians, are coming with us, people who voted for other parties. So what I'm telling you, we are not having all the Conservatives that are coming with us in our party, and we are growing. So we cannot split the vote.
Well, Mr. Bernier, once again, I want to thank you for your time. I know by going through the comment section of our various videos, the number of times you see phrases like "Go Max" and "Go PPC," it's off the charts. And I think in the months to come, with these debates, maybe my suggestion is buy a good raincoat, because I think the mudslinging in this upcoming campaign is going to be off the charts. It's going to be uncharted territory that we've never seen before. But good luck with the debates. Good luck with the campaign, sir. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come to Rebel World headquarters here in Toronto and have a chat with me.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.